Hello and welcome to the L&G Just Covered podcast, where we talk to advisors and key stakeholders in our industry about their views and opinions in the intermediary space. My name's Wayne.
And I'm Hazel, and today we are joined by Matt, who has recently joined HL Partnership as Propositions Director. So welcome to Just Covered podcast, Matt. It's great to have you on.
Good to be here, thank you.
Yeah, no, welcome. And we're really looking forward to hearing about your journey and you know what it's like to work in that sort of service provider network space. So tell us a little bit about your career so far and your journey.
Sure, that's the easy bit to talk about myself, isn't it? So I've been in financial services for just over 20 years now. You can tell me I don't look old enough, but I have got these grey hairs down the side to show. Started my career in the banking environment, so sort of worked in a branch for a high street lender on the counter. How would you like your cash, Mr. Customer? And sort of worked my way up through the banking side of the industry. I got into mortgages around 2007, went and did CMAP, took on a team of personal mortgage advisors, did a bit of the direct world, and then sort of got an opportunity to go and do something else. 14 years in, I was like, am I staying here for life or shall I try something else? And I sort of branched out into the network and distribution space and joined another network. Did a bit of time there, did some time as a national account manager in the conveyancing world, ended up back in distribution again. And I feel like distribution is home for me, to be honest. So, you know, every day is different in distribution, and I think there's lots of facets to the role. There's lots of exciting stuff going on, and working in proposition, you know, it's ever changing, which is good.
Yeah, it's a new thing every day for propositions, isn't it? And obviously you're in the newish role, I suppose, at the moment.
Yes.
At HL Partnership, which absolutely is going really, really well from what I can see. Propositions, you sort of stayed within that, haven't you?
Yes.
What motivates you about that area, and what gets you out of bed in the morning with regards to that?
So I think, you know, the exciting stuff about proposition is when we're developing stuff in conjunction with protection providers or lenders and bringing stuff to panel, the end person who's getting the result there is a customer, and we're all customers of something. So for me, I'm always thinking about when someone comes to me, you know, I get a message every day on LinkedIn, can we have our proposition on your panel, Matt? And some you have to really think about, and some you go, that doesn't work in our world. But, you know, what excites me, what gets me out of bed, the customer at the end of the day is getting something from our brokers who's making a decent recommendation. So, you know, I think it's a good world to be. And I deal with all the propositions. So I've got lending, I've got protection, I've got GI, I've got ancillary. So I could have a conversation with you today about protection, and then an hour later I'm talking to somebody about conveyancing. So it's exciting.
Going across the piece,
yeah, it's a lot of hats to wear. So with the intermediaries obviously listening to this, then what goes into those decisions? I guess because quite often an intermediary, certainly if we speak to events and things, they'll say, oh, why can't we just have that, or why is this not existed? So and I guess it depends how much information you give. I know every network's slightly different, but what would you say are the kind of key decisions that go into some of that?
So I think we always have to balance risk with stuff, right? You know, we have to make sure that we don't just say, yeah, we'll have that proposition because we think it looks good. So you've got to balance risk. You've got to make sure you can deliver something that not only gives, you know, a broker an opportunity to help a client, but it's safe. So we've got, you know, in the network, lots of different departments. We have a sales department, we have a compliance department, we have a product governance risk department, we've got proposition. And that decision, I'd take a look at it, have a chat. Some of my colleagues would get involved in that. And then if we thought it had legs and the brokers would want it on the panel, we'd ultimately take it to like a products and pricing committee where we'd sit down and have a sensible discussion about, is that right for our business? Do brokers want it? And does it help the customer? And then that safe bit, you know, is it safe? It's not going to get us into trouble with the regulator.
And forgive me for asking, do you then, as part of that process, will brokers like this? Do you sometimes have to go out to a panel of brokers in order to research that?
Yeah, and that's some of the traffic that I get where brokers are asking me for stuff. You know, they'll say, why haven't we got access to this? Or can we have access to that? So yes, absolutely. You know, there's no point bringing something to the panel if it's never going to get sold and the client doesn't want it.
And the importance of that, isn't it? You know, certainly likes of the FCA and stuff like that, when they're doing some of the work they've been doing over the last last couple of years, they've asked about that end customer research, and brokers are so important to that, aren't they? Because they're hearing what's happening from what the customers want, and in terms of whether our products, whether it be in the lending space, whether it be in the protection annuity space, whether they're actually landing properly and they're the right target market.
Totally. Yeah.
Excellent.
And in terms of HL partnership at the moment, then obviously you're fairly recently into role. It's still a little bit new. What are some of the kind of wins that you're seeing there?
Sure, I can play the new card, I reckon, for a little bit longer. I'm 6 months in.
Yeah.
Although if Chris Tanner, my boss, is watching this, I'm not new anymore. Okay, so
Since we've last caught up, you are.
yeah, indeed. But yeah, so some of the wins, particularly in the protection space. So we're seeing a real uplift in income protection. I think COVID massively helped people understand, and I hate talking about COVID because, it feels like that word's been in our vocabulary for a very long time, but actually it helped people realise that this is what happens when I can't work. We had the whole furlough situation, didn't we? And people just finding themselves in predicaments. So the income protection stuff for us, we're seeing a real lift in numbers on income protection. I think some of the other wins, we're a growing network. So the figures have come out this week on the network league table. We won't name who writes that and where it comes from, but there is a network league table that's out there, and we're growing. We're making significant investment in our business. We've brought Peter Curran in, who's well known in the industry, and we've just got some excitement around the network. We were at your BQA Awards yesterday, so talking about wins, I should have the trophy here to hold up to the camera, but we won a Customer Excellence Award, Best Network. That's amazing,
and huge congratulations for that. But massive. It's just such an accolade. So well done.
and I know that I've been to that, event 3 times, and to stand up there and pick that up for HL partnership was amazing, because I know what you have to do to get that award. It's not it's who you know kind of award. It's actually based on your deliverables. So, really proud of that, and thanks for your support.
And one for the membership as well, isn't it, in terms of representing the culture and values of HLP in terms of putting the customer first.
It's we wouldn't have that award if it wasn't for the business quality that the brokers are writing. It's their award, really.
Oh, that's lovely. And yeah, you're right. BQAs were definitely, when I joined L&G, it was so eye-opening to me how we actually judge that, and the amount of work that goes in behind the scenes from each of the winners in terms of their write-ups or submissions, and in all the work they've done throughout the year to actually have something to put on that submission. And so yeah, huge congratulations to HLP.
Yeah, it's just nice to have, isn't it? A collective celebration. It's our 14th year, the biggest one we've done yet, and a collective celebration of the importance that brokers, advisors, firms, networks have with regards to customers, and how can they influence customers' lives, and do influence customers' lives.
And I think that came through yesterday. You had people there with stories, right? Brokers, there was the guy who had his dad, some of these stories. And I think we have a huge job to do in this industry. We're quite lucky, we know we should have a protection policy, and we talk about it day in, day out. But I can go down the pub and talk to one of my mates, and it's like you're talking a different language. And I think our responsibility in these roles that we've got, talking to protection or talking about protection on a daily basis, we should be educating friends, family. We've got a job to do, right? And it's not old sales tactics anymore that it perhaps was 20 years ago. It's more about how do we show people what the value is in that policy, and I think you did a good job at the event.
Thank you. And it's the brokers themselves knowing they have that value. I know we talk about this a lot, but them really knowing, because no one else is going to talk to customers about that in the same way. So whether it is looking at the lending space, whether it's the protection, whether it's the investment, whether it's annuities, whatever space it's that value in order to customers understand from a simplified position, they get it, and they can make that informed decision. And I think sometimes, I don't know whether brokers sit back and think, actually, I am really important in this. And it's not being conceited. It's about knowing your value in the chain.
And I think as well, when we look at it, it's about sensible decision making, isn't it? Because there'll be different budgets involved, different client outcomes at stake, depending on that client's preferences and their value perception of what the product's providing for them, isn't it? And
totally.
The thing I find interesting, especially when I've worked in the protection space, is there are still a lot of intermediaries who haven't got it themselves. And you think, well, if you've not bought into it, how do you get your customer to buy into it? So what I'm curious to know, Matt, is all of the work that HLP have put into winning that award. What are some of the key things that probably stand out to you, or any stories even from HLP or your career before HLP that really kind of bring home the need for advice? And
I think, you know, we talk about heroes, and I think that was your word from yesterday. There's lots of brokers with stories. You know, I've got friends, family, colleagues, you know, with stories. And I think, what do we do really well in the network? We get people to talk about those stories and bring them to life. And, you know, we recently did an event where we had a panel and someone sat down, and, you know, that's a bit better than watching a video sometimes because they're listening to a peer. So I think, you know, for me, education is something we're massive on, and we can all get better at that in every network. You know, education is king, I think, because the more you can embed into the broker, the better conversation they'll have with the clients. And, you know, there's lots of tools. You have them, your competitors have them, but the broker needs to be on board to be willing to use them and have a protection conversation. So I think there's still work to do, right? You know, I could sit here and say everything's fantastic, but if everything was fantastic, every single person would have a protection policy. So there's still work to do.
Yeah, and from your experience, you'll have direct experience in helping brokers, if you like, advisors grow their businesses in order to make sure that they can reach more and more customers. We've all got quite similar backgrounds, haven't we? We've gone through the building society, the bank starting on the counter, that type of stuff. That opportunity is not necessarily around anymore. So what are you seeing both from your previous role and the current role? How are people coming into the industry now? Where are they getting that experience from? And then how are they ending up in being a broker, basically?
There's a real good mix, I think, you know. So I think there's an attraction sometimes to a non-industry person coming in, but you've got to have the right training and support. There's no point giving, you know, if I'm running a firm, I was having a conversation with a HLP broker yesterday about this very subject, actually. They're running a business and they were talking about recruiting and bringing people in. If you bring somebody in with zero experience, you've got to invest a hell of a lot of time in that person. Now, if you're a broker writing business and running your own business, that's difficult to step away because you're actually losing money, aren't you, by not selling? So I think, you know, the reality is some of these opportunities of people without financial services experience should be taken up, but then it's up to the network to get involved and help with training. I think it's also up to you guys to support us.
Yeah,
you know?
no, I totally agree.
You've got some great teams. You've got your market development team. Your competitors have got similar teams. So I think we should be looking wider. You know, a lot of skills are transferable, aren't they? You know, I didn't have a protection background. I knew nothing about distribution before I joined it. You know, I joined Personal Touch as the first network. And I remember my wife saying to me, what's that? It sounds a bit strange. And I think, you know, you don't have a clue, do you? If you work on the high street, you know the high street. But my skills from the high street were transferable. And then I went into conveyancing and did that for 3 years. That was transferable. So we need to look outside a little bit sometimes.
I agree.
That's not always the answer. We also should look inside and not forget the people who have worked in banks and building societies who might want to step away into the intermediary space. But I think, you know, we shouldn't be insular with our view.
No, you're right.
That
That transferable skill thing is so hugely important, isn't it? Because you think about a new person coming into the industry, they've not seen it before, that excitement, that enthusiasm, that passion. How do you harness that? Now, there's going to be people in our industry already that have got that. And you're right, we shouldn't discount those. But it's that investment in time from the providers, from the networks, from the business owner to do that. How do you sort of balance that up? You know, there's academies out there and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
How do you do it so efficiently so you can make sure they get to where they need to get to, but they learn all the hints and tips, maybe from things like this podcast, which is one of the reasons we put it together in order for them to get to where they need to get to.
You're right, because the business owner hasn't got the time to do 100% themselves. No. So they need to utilise the network who they pay a fee to be part of. So we can help with training. But then we have great relationships with our lenders and providers. Therefore, we should be using that. And, you know, and again, you know, I've already said this, but people will go round into branches of, you know, brokers' locations and spend time and train people. So we just need to get better at using that, I think.
And it's knowing what's out there, isn't it? Because as you said, you know, we've got our market development team. That's a free resource to any intermediary who wants to get training for their firm. And I think that it's amazing how many people still don't know about it. And it is just knowing what's out there. I mean, we're filming an episode next month where we're getting an IFA coming in with one of his apprentices and how they built that up, because exactly the story you've just covered is their business got to a point it was big enough, but they didn't have the time to train someone, but they knew they needed extra support in to grow the business further. So it's that rock and a hard place of that jump, isn't it?
Yes.
And where you go.
And I think, you know, I forgot about apprentices. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's a great route into the industry. At HLP, we've got a few apprentice vacancies to bring people into like the finance team and give them an understanding. And I know some brokers look at that route, because actually if you bring someone in at a junior level and you look after them and they get excited about financial services, because let's be honest, most people I speak to ended up in financial services. They didn't choose to, and I'm the classic example of that.
We've got to be on a mission to get people to choose it.
We have, yeah, because it is a good industry. You know, I genuinely think we have great people in this industry, and it still has this stigma to it, doesn't it? Where I say to people I work in financial services, and it sounds boring, doesn't it?
Bit of a conversation stopper sometimes.
But it isn't. We know it isn't boring, right?
Yeah.
How do we say that with enthusiasm? I'm working financial service.
If you can help me with that, I'd be really grateful. Yeah.
Well, we going back to that transferable skill piece, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's educating people on what skills are needed. Because, like yourself, I did physiotherapy at uni. That's what I came out of school and did. I only lasted a year doing it. Realised quite quickly it wasn't the industry that I wanted to work in, but everyone said to me at the time, how on earth have you gone from that to being an advisor? But it was the same. In physio, you did a fact find on what the person's symptoms were and what their conditions were. You then looked at the gaps and where you needed to get them, and then you'd put a solution plan in place. So actually what I was doing was the exact same, just then looking at their mortgage or financial planning. And everyone found it extremely strange that I jumped from one to the other. Yeah. But actually I found quite quickly it was very similar principles.
I can't wait to have that conversation at home, because my wife is a physiotherapist.
Oh, really?
So I'll tell her her skills are transferable to financial services.
But what skills would you say if if I was an intermediary or somebody thinking, I might look to get into the intermediary market, what skills would you say you personally would look for, or you think people should work on to make them successful in this side?
So you need to be good with people, right? That's a given. You have to be good with people if you're going to help them with their protection, their mortgage. So, we can help people with the skills, but we can't help people with personality. So you've got to be good with people, I would say. I'd also say customer service skills. Think about all those roles that have customer service attached to them across the entire UK. If you're good at customer service, you can probably do a good job in our industry. And then if you're going to be a broker, putting a compliance hat on, you've got to be good with your paperwork. You've got to make sure you're documenting stuff. So, I think there's a lot of stuff in lots of other industries that would easily map over to you. But for me, we're servicing, we're helping customers, aren't we, right? So if you're good with customers and you know how to deal with people, that's half the battle, I think.
That commitment to customers, isn't it?
Yes.
Building those relationships and really want to think of the examples of people we've all known in the industry, whether it be back office admin people, front customer facing, the people that do all that sort of heavy lifting and hard work sometimes in terms of making sure policies go on, whether it be they get the mortgage, everything's paperwork's all in and all correctly, liaising with lenders. And I'm thinking about when there was the more turmoil in the interest rates and stuff. That was a hectic time, wasn't it? That type of person just fits in our industry, don't they? They just really do.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that'll give reassurance to anyone listening to think, I do want to grow my business, I do want to recruit. And maybe give them a bravery of actually I will step outside and see if there's somebody that with that skill set, maybe in a different area, but I can look at that now and get the right skill set in, but then get the support from providers, network provider, all the industry to get that person trained up.
Totally.
I'm curious, Matt, we mentioned a little bit ago, all the hats you've got to wear and all the plates you've got to spin as part of your role. And at the time of filming this, we are in Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes.
How do you stay balanced?
It's a great question. Anyone who follows me on LinkedIn will probably get sick of my running posts. Wayne's already asked me if I've been for a run this morning, and the answer was yes, I have. But for me, just that time of whether it's first thing in the morning or it's after work, I've got 2 young kids at home, so I've got to balance family, mental health, work, everything. I feel like I've just about got it right at the moment. So whenever I'm away with work, the running stuff's in the suitcase. I go for a run. my kids play football. They both train at the same place, and there's a running track around it, so I can do it then.
Awesome.
So we didn't plan that, but it just happened. So for me, just getting that time to have a little bit of me time whilst being a dad, a husband, an employee and all those things, it's really important because you can burn out, can't you? I've been in jobs before where I've sat at my laptop for 12 hours, and at the end of the day, I think I didn't help put the kids to bed. I ate my tea really quickly with my wife. I went back to my laptop. That isn't necessarily the right thing to do. I'm not a 9 till 5 where I finish at 5 o'clock type person. If I've got to do some work to do some work, I will. But I think people have to be strict with themselves, particularly with the laptop at home situation now, again. The COVID word's coming out again, but there's a lot more people who work from home post-COVID. It's very easy to dib in and out of your laptop after hours, before hours, because it's there. When I worked in the bank, probably the same for you too, when you shut that door of the branch, you had no access to technology. So I didn't have a work phone. I didn't have the email. The branch door shut and I couldn't do any more work.
Having said that though, I remember the day that I got my first I got to a more senior position, so I got my first laptop and mobile phone, and I was so excited, like I've made it. And then very quickly, I think it was when the Beast of the East snow happened.
Oh, was it?
So it was very quickly I realised that maybe wasn't as glamorous, because I was able to work from home during all of that whilst all my other colleagues were out just having a great time in the snow. So it is that balance, isn't it?
I remember my first work phone being a BlackBerry, and I had no idea how to work it, but it had a proper keyboard on it and everything. And I thought it was great, but I couldn't work it for probably 3 months. But you're right, this whole new way of working is great if you balance it right and you use it right.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we're talking in the previous podcast around where technology has gone, and we haven't been able to envisage where we've ended up. One of the examples was that sort of 4 or 5 years ago, people would have been using cash.
Yep.
Then a couple of years ago, they were using cards, and now everything's on the phone. Hazel gave the example of just using the phone. We perhaps never have seen that coming. So as things get more and more easy, you slip into that world of just, you think it's easier for you, but actually it's interesting sort of psychology behind it, in that you end up doing more, but now we've got that ability or opportunity to rein ourselves back, which you're demonstrating, you're doing, and we're all trying to do. But it is hard, isn't it?
It is.
Particularly as you want to do well, you want to please, you want to make sure you're giving your best self, putting your best self forward. It is a difficult thing to do, to keep that balance.
It is. Yeah.
And especially when I think about our intermediaries listening to this, as the business owners, and you've got client. I remember when I was advising, if a client phones you at 8 o'clock at night because all of a sudden their preference on a property's changed, or the seller's been in touch and offers now rejected, they need to try and get more money in. It is really hard to have that discipline, isn't it?
And that's the word, isn't it? Discipline. You've got to be disciplined. So mine is my hour to do a run, and that's my discipline. And as long as I've done that, it doesn't matter if I have to work over or whatever I need to do. But I know I'm feeling okay. I need to have tea with my wife and kids, I need to sit down. In London, I think you call it dinner, but in Stoke, we call it tea. So I need to sit down and have my food, with my family. And I think just some small little disciplines that I've changed over the years have worked for me.
And has it taken you a while to find those?
Yes. If you speak to my wife, I'm probably still not quite there, but I do feel like I'm getting better.
There's a different bar at home. I've got it too.
No, definitely. Well, I see that my husband's self-employed, and he's been doing that about a year now. And you definitely see that shift in balance, and how you learn to and especially as a business grows, you then get, as you said, Wayne, you get more and more put onto you, don't you?
You do.
So in terms of the landscape at the moment, thinking of remaining with that balance theme then, obviously we've got such a volatile market. It has been over the last, 2 years now coming up? It's been very volatile. So again, what are your views on that, and where can you see things going in the kind of mortgage protection market?
It is where I get my crystal ball out here. So, these base rate cuts are helping, aren't they, right? So, I think Donald Trump isn't helping. The base rate cuts are helping. And it's all about, in that mortgage space, and you know this well, Wayne, we've had these discussions before, where there's a lot of product transfer type business. Sometimes that's difficult for the advisor to have a protection conversation because they're just doing a quick rate switch. So, I think the market is okay at the moment. I sat by a couple of brokers yesterday who were telling me how busy they are. One of them had to go early to go and exactly your scenario, what you just described, go and do some business and help a client. So I think the opportunity is always there with protection, because the gap between how many mortgages are sold and how much protection is written is huge. So I don't think there's a lack of opportunity. I just think there's probably more work that needs to be done from everybody in the industry to pull together.
And I think as well, that's where I guess when you are in a world of product transfers, rate switch, things that aren't earning you quite as much.
Yes.
That's where protection can bolster that, isn't it? Do you see more brokers looking at that or considering that as a business plan?
And I think we have to stop looking. If I walk into a broker's office, I don't have a post-it note on my head that says, I am a product transfer, do I? Right. So the reality is I am a client with probably multiple needs. And I think sometimes people don't think of it like that. They go, I remember in the bank world, a mortgage advisor used to say to me, oh, it's just a product transfer. And I used to accept that. It's just a product transfer. But it isn't just a product transfer, is it? It's a client. And I think, we have to also think about, in the mortgage space, the remortgage opportunity. So it probably isn't just a product transfer. If you do all your research, it could be placed with another lender, saving the client money, and then you can do a protection review out of that money, what's left over. So
yeah, it's about setting the stall out as well. And you think sometimes when customers are coming for a potential product transfer, because there are a client with multiple needs, has that stall been set out about the whys and wherefores, the value, the benefits of having an ongoing relationship with a broker been set out at the start? And perhaps it hasn't. And I would say it's our role collectively with to help brokers articulate that, because the more and more that customers know that's the reason they're talking to a broker, rather than thinking, oh, right, I've had my rate contact from whoever it is, and just talking about that, they're not going to see the benefits of why they should be looking at these things. You can't blame the customer for that, really, can you, to a certain extent?
No.
So collectively, we need to sort of get it out there that this is what you need to do in terms of selling your service. And obviously we do that a lot at LNG with the market development team. You do it as part of the network and stuff. But it's that, I suppose, that ongoing need to get it out there more widely. How we do that with technology nowadays, like I said before, around things like this, I don't know what we do. Maybe there's more AI development technology, I don't know. But something, it's got to be there, isn't it?
And, you've mentioned the magical AI word, right? That's everywhere at the moment, isn't it? Literally most events that I go to now have a section on AI. And some of it's quite scary, but some of it's really exciting. The things that AI can do for people, if they learn how to use it and get on board, is great. I think at your event yesterday, someone touched on our average age group still go to Google to do stuff, right? And I do it as well. I still say Google it. That's part of my vocabulary. But AI can do this for you. Why are we still Googling stuff? That's the reality, isn't it?
Yeah, you think that the AI, and very much the rhetoric has been AI helping advisors, isn't it? And helping them with the tasks that maybe take them away from customer interaction, all that type of thing. The challenge as well, the ongoing challenge, is how AI can help customers to get aware of the things that advisors would either be articulating to them or would do instead of the advisor doing that to help them.
And I think the important thing is every time I hear it talked about at the moment, you still need human interaction, right? So there's all this scare about AI is going to lose me my job. I don't think it is in the grand scheme of things, particularly for a broker, because advice is personalised to a conversation and you have to ask some questions to a client to be able to make a recommendation. So AI can remove hopefully some of the admin and make people's lives easier, but that human touch is still absolutely required.
Well, it's even things like hesitation or the tone change. I mean, when we go back to being advisors ourselves, or even if on the branch, in the branch counter at a bank, you can learn so much just by looking at that customer's hesitate. Especially around that budget conversation. I don't know how many times when I was an advisor that you'd say to them, "Oh, what's your budget?" And you'd have one person go, "Oh, potentially up to this," and it's that versus, "Oh, it's £1,500 a month," or "Oh, I could go to that." And it's that nuance that changes massively in the conversation that you're having to make sure that person stays safe.
That is huge.
It is.
And it's that body language, tone of voice that really that's that human touch.
Of course
part,
it is.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And are you seeing, because that's an interesting point, that because a customer hesitates, AI could detect that, and also that links into sort of the power planning piece. So it's always seeing in
Yes.
with investment advisors and stuff, you'll have advisors go to meetings and things. They may make notes, they may record the meeting, however they work, whatever. The power planner will then might use AI to populate a suitability letter, fact find, all that type of thing. Are you seeing a similar type thing in the mortgage world? Is that sort of thing coming along yet, or is it a bit sort of further away?
Yes, in talks, I would say. I don't think we're quite there yet. There might be some AI going on behind the scenes, but very much at the moment, the advisor writes their suitability letter. The advisor goes and sources what they need to sort. There could be some AI sitting behind the scenes.
But even if they're doing it, say for example, there's typos, the capitals. For example, I was doing something the other day, and I'm classic. You're writing, you look down, you look up. Oh, it's all in capitals. You quickly pop that into Copilot. It will sort all that out. So it's that type of thing.
Yes.
Perhaps that's being used. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
I think it's about who can harness it. I see AI as being more like my assistant rather than it rules my life.
Yeah, exactly
It's my PA type thing that I never had. But yeah, so we've talked about a lot there. We've talked about a bit about market, a bit about products, about your role as proposition director. If for any intermediaries listening to this episode, Matt, what would be the kind of one bit of advice that you'd give them, or top tip that you would give any intermediaries listening?
So I think we talked a lot about recruitment, didn't we? And we talked a lot about getting people into the industry. I think that's so important. A lot of our advisors are getting to a stage where they're getting a little bit older and thinking about what they want to do with their business. We have to keep bringing younger people into the business and make it exciting. So my advice to anyone listening, if you're running your own businesses, have an eye on the future. Who is the next you? Who's going to run your business? What are you going to do with your business? Do you need some options? And there's lots of people who you can talk to about that, in the industry. But I just think we have to keep bringing fresh blood into the industry, because if we don't, where are we going to be?
Well,
I don't think we can argue with that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree
Totally
at all.
agree.
Thank you, Matt. That's been really useful and insightful.
Thanks
Thanks,
for
Matt.
having me on.